I think a lot of people are trapped and they go the easy route. And they don't realize that if they just went down a different road, maybe a little bit harder, a little bit more sacrifice for a period of their life, that at the end they would have much more freedom. And so,
welcome to The Flow, real estate and money show for people in Canada looking to understand the home buying process, to demystify real estate investing, and to make mortgage financing accessible for anyone. The goal here on this show is to help people understand ways to make their money work for them, get in the market sooner, and realistically, completely open up the box on how mortgage financing works. I'm Alex McFadyen, your host, and I can't wait to help get you into the flow.
What's going on, guys? We have an unbelievable guest in today's episode today, Mr. Kenny Simpson. He is one half of the partnership, which is Krystal and Kenny Simpson out of San Diego, US. You're probably wondering, why the heck would you bring a guy from San Diego? Well, just listen to this for a quick second. Kenny and Krystal are mortgage professionals down in San Diego, and they funded over $3 billion of loans. But here's the thing. Here's one of the key reasons. Kenny and Krystal are incredible people, but Kenny's on here today. He's an incredible guy. And he owns over 46 units with over $300,000 of cash flow per year. So essentially over $20 million of real estate. And him and his wife together have become an incredible duo that work in residential and multifamily real estate. They also run a top real estate podcast, which we'll link below. The cool thing is they not only have built an incredible business together, an incredible life together, but also an incredible portfolio together. And Kenny's got so much valuable information to share that can transform, whether you're just getting started in real estate, buying your first home, first investment, thinking about buying in the US, whatever that is, you need to listen to what Kenny has to say. It's just pure gold, and can't wait to have him back on the episode one day. By the way, if you haven't already done so, make sure to leave us a great review on iTunes and let us know what you think about this episode. It would mean a lot to us. If you haven't already done so, follow us on Instagram at Flow Mortgage Co., where we'll be posting more podcast content, and I hope you find your state of flow.
You got this. Awesome. All right, we're on the screen. We're going to do this, so let's get into it. Kenny Simpson, my man, thank you so much, buddy, for joining me today. This is such a pleasure. I'm so excited. I love technology. We only spent 30 minutes trying to figure out how to get the audio and video working in 3 different programs, but we made it here today, which is all that matters. And I'm quite confident that the people listening to the episode today are going to be fired up about the fact that we did, in fact, make it, because you got so much knowledge to drop and so forth. But before we get into any of that kind of stuff, my man, how was the water out there today? How was the surf?
San Diego's nice right now. You know, we've had an interesting year. So probably the cloudiest, gloomiest year, but our summer's here. I was with my daughter last weekend. I was getting her up on the surfboard with me. She's 4. The water was in the 70s. I was trunking it. So I'm not going to complain.
70s in the water, in the ocean. People north of the border can only dream of days like that. We had our 30-day period of that feeling in the lake. I was talking about wake surfing earlier. That's long gone for most people in Canada at this point right now. Back to the igloos, I think. So
yeah.
You live in an awesome place in the world. And, we did a little bit of a brief intro, but a brief intro is not good enough ever when it comes to these types of things. Like, let's be honest, there's always so much more to the story. I shared with you a lot about the purpose of our show, and you do your own podcast, which we'll talk about a little bit later on. But the biggest thing for me in this journey of educating people and bringing amazing people like you on is how to take how you got, and we haven't even talked about in detail, how you got to where you're at right now and bring it back down to earth so that someone could even figure out how to take those first few steps. Kenny, before getting into that, I'm not even letting you talk right now, but I just want to read off some highlights here. $3 billion in funded mortgages, which is how we connected. You're in a situation where you've got 46 units, properties, if you will. You're receiving what only people could imagine in terms of personal income from cash flow from these properties, which means after expenses over $300,000. You're also managing or have managed thousands of units in the past, and you're doing this with your wife and your family, enjoying life. Like, these are the types of things that I don't even think most people can even begin to fathom. So, let's rewind back. Like, let's go back a little bit here and tell me, what was it that clicked in your mind that said, that's the life I want to live, and got you on this journey?
Yeah. I don't know if we say in the mortgage business that nobody picks a mortgage business. First of all, they just accidentally fall into it. So that's kind of how it was. Started in mortgage in 2004 and started off as actually a processor, and then quickly LO, and then had a branch, and then, fast forward, kind of had a partnership, and then that partnership went away with the financial crash of 2008. And then that's when I met Krystal. I knew her before, knew her mom, and we kind of got together when the market was not good and things were not good and people were foreclosures and short sales and all that fun stuff. And then we kind of just said, hey, we almost feel like we hit the reset button. You're kind of down and out, you're young, you don't know what to do. And at that time, so we just kind of said, hey, we got to start building this thing back up. Didn't know what that meant. And we just started getting to work. And that's the one thing I can just, for us, is both of us did not finish college. We just didn't. We just decided we were in college, said, I just want to work. So one thing we have is we know how to work and we know how to make money. And the big thing about that is we just really good at helping customers achieve what they want to do, whether that's purchase or refinance or, getting them investment properties. And so we just focus on that. And then so we got together, my wife does commercial financing, I do residential. In about 2012, somebody came to us and said, hey, would you want to manage a property? And we're kind of like, well, we want to get in the apartment game, multifamily game, and said, why not? So we took on that and we kind of just managed that for like a couple of years. And then later on, somebody else said, hey, we're tired of our management. Would you want to take over this? And it went to 50 units and it went to 200 units. And then within 2.5 years from when we kind of said, look, we're going to start a business, it went over to about 1,500 units. It grew out of control. It was really fast. And the funny thing is because you're in Canada, one of the clients during that time is actually Canadian and was in Calgary in a big apartment owner there. And he decided to move a bunch of money down to San Diego. So we helped him. He was actually frustrated with property management. So we helped him build his portfolio from about 180 units to 750 units in 2 years. So we did the brokerage, the financing, the rehabbing, the repositioning, kind of like a Burr model on apartments. And so we were doing that with other people while we're still doing our financing business and all that. And we started buying our own stuff. So what we did is we kind of did within a short amount of time, we did a lot of stuff, which was, like you said, for most people, probably would not recommend it. A little bit overwhelming, a lot of work, 80-hour weeks, 100-hour weeks, 7 days a week before kids. And then we got like a double, triple master's in real estate because we got the financing and the management and the rehab and how to buy. And it basically kind of gave us a well-rounded, just with everything we've done. And then we just continue to keep buying. And look, I've made mistakes along the way. I was just talking to a client today. We kind of ventured off into a couple different sectors in real estate and did different things with partnerships. That didn't work out. So is where I'm at today. We even lost over just cash in deals, not equity, over $2 million. And so that's just kind of like walking away from bad businesses, bad deals. So my kind of thing now I tell people is if I would just focus on the multifamily and just investing, I'd probably be more than double my size, double the cash flow. So I don't look back. I just look forward and go, okay, like now I know what I want to focus on. So, so today where are we at? We sold the property management company. And at that time, I just, for some reason said, man, I want to get into marketing, which we never did any marketing. If we called it marketing, it was a joke and embarrassing. And so I just said, I want to get into marketing. 4 months later, I landed in Gary Vee's office at a 4D dive. He said, what are you doing here? I said, honestly, I don't really know. I'm just trying to learn this whole social media thing. I told him about my little story, like I kind of told you. He said, well, why don't you just go back to San Diego and give it all away? And I kind of looked at him. I said, what does that really mean? And he said, just, figure it out. Okay. So I came back here, started a podcast, started doing content. And then people started realizing and hearing our story and said, holy moly, I didn't know you guys did all that stuff. Wow, that's crazy. And I just didn't know I was supposed to write a book. Did all I did. But so we've done a couple hundred episodes. We get in the Cashflow game and just kind of like you, educating and teaching people about what we've done, bringing on other people in the industry, what they've done. And honestly, we just got started with a house and then we took the money and we just redeployed that. And honestly, it's just like everybody else. We got started, we sacrificed. And today it's kind of funny. We actually rent. We don't even own a home because I keep deploying all the money we buy. I mean, all the money we have, we just keep deploying it into investment properties. And that's just the game. Because at some point you might not want to do loans or a realtor or your business or whatever you do. You want that financial freedom and that's got to come from somewhere. And so we kind of thought that's going to come from investing in real estate and cash flow.
So there's, dude, like there was that was incredible.
A lot of stuff. I tried to compile it quick as I could. Yeah.
And I think, well, the goal for me, and I'm listening to this, I'm like, oh my gosh, there's all the things I want to ask here. And I know for everybody, that's it. So like one thing that stood out right away was both you guys, obviously you said didn't even make it through school and decided to drop out. Did you guys both drop out of school at the same time when you were doing the mortgage financing, or was that a separate occurrence before you even met? Like what was the deal there?
Yeah. So it was right. I dropped out, and it was right before I went in 2004. I just said, this is just not for me. I was paying for school. I was driving there. I was also going to school, working. I didn't have a family that was paying for it. So when you're doing all that, and I'm seeing friends make money in real estate, and I wanted to just go from high school into real estate at 18, my mom's like, that's a dumb idea, which now I tell her you should have let me do that. So I did. And that was before Krystal. Krystal actually went to school for probably about a year. And then at 19, she started getting into the commercial. So she's been in the commercial financing business since 19, and she'll be 40 at the end of this month. So I call her the commercial queen. So she's really good at what she does. She does a lot of lending here. So that's literally what she's known. She's never really worked for somebody. She's just had that mindset. And so she's been around. That's how we got into the game. Is I started doing her clients, and I looked at tax returns. I go, man, look at the properties. These guys don't work and they don't even pay any taxes, and look at the cash flow. And this is crazy. And I started realizing, like, we need to do this. And so that's kind of how, one of the ways we got in the game, just by like looking at the fundamentals of it, of lifestyle, of taxes and cash flow and all that. And you realize, like, wow, if you build this when you get into your 50s and 60s, you probably could just go enjoy life instead of having to keep closing another deal or close another mortgage, or, your W-2 job, whatever it is you're doing,
Yeah, so like, back to that point again, it's usually the beginning that is the hardest part for most people. And you talked about the fact that for a lot of situations that you've come across, they've gone the wrong way, or they've ended poorly, or perhaps just didn't work out for you, whether it was the partnerships or something else. But it is really the beginning that is the hardest part for most people. And let's be honest, like, Kenny, a lot of people we talk to, and especially people who are listening to the podcast, they don't necessarily want to own $40 million of real estate and run a business through that, but they want to improve their lives through owning a few pieces of real estate, whether that's, have a house to pass down to their kids or something else. So like, what was, I guess, would you chalk it up to just being kind of like young and dumb and not knowing to take that first step, or what kind of prompted you to take what was that first step look like? What did that look like? If you could kind of picture where your head was at that time and what you did.
Scared.
Yeah.
Yeah. We just got out of the financial crisis, which pretty much financially kind of ruined me, because I was not in a good partnership. I didn't make money for a while, and then I had to kind of rebuild. So we were just making money. We bought a property. And if I, ask a financial advisor if I should be buying a house at this time with the money I had in the bank and what I was doing, he'd probably say, no, you should wait. But probably a little bit of young, dumb, and just go for it. And, the biggest real estate investors that I've met here that are billionaires and 100 millionaires that I know personally, and you ask them the same question, they're like, I didn't know what I was doing. Like, I had nothing to lose. Like, I just went for it. So a little bit is like, you got to just go for it. If you don't have any risk at all, there's no reward. So, back on that, it's even my story, but I've been fortunate to be around so many real estate investors. And when I say that, it could be somebody that owns one property. They don't have to own, like you said, hundreds of millions of dollars or all these buildings. And I've met people that have literally been two school teachers. I love these stories. They never made that much money because, school teachers don't. But what they did is they just decided at some point in life, we're going to buy a 4-unit. And then we're going to eventually pay that 4-unit off. And when they went into retirement, that 4-unit now in San Diego pays them, they make $7,500 net a month when they get their pensions. But that has allowed them to travel around the world, to live where they want to do, to not stress. They're like, Kenny, if we just had the pensions, we couldn't help a family or do all this stuff. So, and I agree with you. This isn't, not everybody wants, maybe it's just the one thing. Maybe it's just a one property or two properties. It doesn't have to be this big scale thing. I think what focused for me was, at some point, I'm not going to want to do mortgages. And so I was around a dad that was a corporate guy. And so he work at a place, 17 years, get fired, kick him out the door, and he's on to the next thing. And then you realize he was left with nothing. There was no exit plan. There was no nothing. And, my dad's still in his 70s, still works at a corporate job. And, and like I said, is I did not want that. I wanted to see the guys that are 50 years old at every practice of their kids at every school rehearsal and everything. So if I want to go watch my kid or do what I want to do, even at this point in my life, I want the freedom to be there and do whatever I want. And so I knew that I'm going to have to, outside of mortgages, I got to do something else. And what fit our bucket was buying investment properties. And for some other people, it could be something else, but it really is just that future thinking about where do I see my life? How do I see my life? And then back into that and go, well, I don't have kids, so I can really work hard, because now that I have kids, I'm not willing to sacrifice my time with them to go do what I did before. And now I have enough momentum and stuff where I can keep doing what I'm doing, but I'm not going to work 70, 100 hours a week, because I want to be a good dad and I want to be there.
So like, I mean, dude, that's very commendable. And here's the thing, that's really hard to do, like what you just mentioned, because I imagine that along that journey, there were a lot of things that you had to give up to get to the point that you're getting to. Notwithstanding, you said you didn't want to work 70 hours a week, but you probably worked 80 to 100 hours a week when you kind of started things off, which kind of leads me to two separate thoughts on this. And I'll hit them up one at a time here. The first one was, when you bought that first home and you were going through that process of purchasing that first property, you mentioned that you were scared and you were unsure, and you didn't know, like, obviously what that was going to turn out like and where it went. What triggered in your mind? So was it the thought of like looking at your dad and where you were at? Was that what triggered you to going to that next level, to buying, the next property, so the investment property, and thinking to yourself, I want to buy this one? Or was it like almost like an accident where you just kept buying and buying and buying and accumulating? Because I would suggest that my thoughts and my question is, it's really hard to get into real estate for a lot of folks right now because of the cost of ownership or the cost of buying. And so was it intentional or unintentional? And what were your thoughts and feelings in that?
Yeah, so great question. So one of our mentors here that has a lot of property, we were at lunch with him. It's probably 2011. And I asked him, what would you do if you're me? He's like, I'd go rent somewhere and just buy as much real estate as you can until you get to a certain level, then buy a house. Okay. But the other thing he said is that, Kenny, we can sit here and keep talking about these things, but you just got to get in the game. And so, you got to get off the sidelines and you got to get in the game. And so the biggest step for most of us, whether it's investing in real estate or a lot of things in life, is getting off the sidelines and actually stepping on the field and playing in the game. So I got in the game. And when I got in the game, that just meant mentally, I went from I'm scared, whether it's money, whether is the market going to crash again? And we just came out of the Great Recession. Obviously, I'm scarred. I'm affected. I'm going to buy a house. A lot of people were negative about it too. Like, what are you guys doing? You don't even know what you're doing. And so it wasn't like, yay, go get it. It wasn't like that. So it wasn't like support. So we just took a leap of faith, saying based on what we knew, what we thought and talked about, and I wasn't even as smart and intelligent as I am now about data and stuff. It was kind of like, we're just going to do this. And we thought the market was low and it was going to go up. And we even if we mess up, we'll do well. And so it was just more of a mind shift, saying I'm on the sidelines. And if I'm ever going to do this, I got to do it. And so we just decided just to jump in and just start swimming. And that's what it was. And, it's not easy. I get it, because it's just analysis paralysis or whatever's holding us back. So it was literally, I always tell people that I have these conversations. I said, you got to just get in the game, because when you get in the game and you and I talk again, it's going to be a completely different conversation. So when I bought the first deal and we made the money and moved on, now I was like, it's not talking about getting the first deal. Now it's talking about, what do I do with this money? What about the next deal? What about the third deal? What about the fourth deal? How do we maximize? So the conversation changes. What you think you're going to do if you just buy this deal to the fourth deal is probably going to completely change, because you are going to completely change your mindset, your mind shift, everything. And that's the one thing that people just don't know, right? They just don't know, once you get in the game and you have some success, it changes everything.
Amazing. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And so speaking of that, again, coming back to somebody who's doing this now, 2023, they're in this mindset where they're like, okay, well, that's inspiring, but I've already got like 3 kids. I've already got a job. I've already got these things going on. And real estate is so expensive. Like, what are some of the things that you suggest that people do if they're coming at it from that perspective? Maybe they own a single property right now and they're just looking at it and saying like, man, like, I can't even imagine how I would get into this. Like, we all know there's a path, there's a journey. It takes time to get there. But where would you start? What are some of the things that you'd suggest to someone to kind of change their mindset about leverage and just starting?
Well, the good news, Alex, for everybody is that when I was doing this in 2012, there wasn't this podcast, there wasn't YouTube, there wasn't all this information that's out there now. So, first of all, the amount of free information that's out there of gurus and people that are really good at what they do is insane. Whether it's wholesaling, flipping, syndicating, buying, whatever it is, like you do stuff, I do stuff, right? It's unbelievable. The book. So, first of all, I tell people is start getting obsessed and consume and learn as much as you can. Another great thing is go to investor meetups. So if you want to buy, go to investor meetups, because you're going to go have beers and happy hour or whatever in these rooms where people are scared like you. And you're going to have the same kind of, okay, well, now I'm around a community that's scared and you're kind of working together. So I think it's also not just a mind shift, but also if you're having a barbecue and everybody at the barbecue is like, oh, real estate sucks and you shouldn't buy it, you're not going to buy real estate. But if you go to a barbecue and you're having conversations and people understand the market and why it's a good time to buy, and they bought this deal and how they did it, and you're around these different conversations, you start going, holy smokes, the wheels start spinning, right? Just like how you and I met, we were at a mastermind. We can go around the wrong mastermind. Everybody's doom and gloom and negative, but we were at a mastermind where people are like making things happen. They're doing things. And so the first thing you got to do is get around the right people, get around the right information, because I don't care if you're really, headstrong. If you're around the wrong people and the wrong information, it's going to be that much harder to make a decision. That's number one. And number two, get a good team, get a good lender, get a good agent. So if you want to buy investment properties, you probably wouldn't go work with an agent that sells luxury, homes and that you're looking for somebody that understands, oh yeah, I like, here in, let's say, California, 2 to 4 units that really specialize, that understands it, that's help people, first time people get in, hold their hand, show them the numbers, go through the whole thing, and then work with the lender, work with that. And then that's another good strategy. And then I tell people, just start looking at deals and size them so you understand what a deal is and what a bad deal is. And then when you start understanding all this stuff, and then you start going and you look at a property, you'll start to realize. So I think it's just doing these steps before you even buy anything is what I've done, other people did, because it's kind of like anything else. Like you got to learn it before, like let's take surfing. You're not going to go paddle out where I was just at Fiji at Cloud Break, which is a big wave over a shallow reef. If you just started surfing, you're going to start at small waves and build your way up and eventually go surf a bigger wave. And it's just like this. Maybe you don't buy your property for 6 months or 8 months, but during that time, you should be becoming an expert with your own information and your own knowledge, and then going to ask other experts the right questions, because you don't even know what questions to ask because you haven't spent any time on educating yourself.
Oh man, there was so much value and so much information in that statement. Again, it seems like you might have had these conversations a few times in the past, but you're very good at articulating that. And I feel like you're the type of person that's also very reflective on what's worked and what hasn't worked to you before. So, speaking of getting around the right people and talking about that is the point of presenting. So someone listening to this podcast right now is already, one of however many people, they're already putting themselves in a position where how you're explaining things is probably putting them in a more positive mindset versus negative mindset, which is what the media is, which leads me to my next talk. So a lot of the challenges around real estate, in my opinion, are more emotionally based, like meaning when the market's taking off or the market's quiet. I mean, there's obviously economic factors which impact this, the cost of borrowing, interest rates, and so forth. But it's kind of like I feel like everybody has seen this poster on their school wall where there's like all the fish going one way and the blue fish going the other way. It's like anybody who's buying real estate as even if it's for yourself in a market like this, and when I say market like this, a high interest rate market, you're the blue fish, but it's super freaking hard to be the blue fish, and it's super hard to analyze that. Now, the reason I bring that up is because obviously when rates are high, cash flow is down, right? In many situations, I would imagine. Maybe you could tell me that's wrong, in which case I'd love if you told me that was wrong. But so how do you analyze? The question is, how do you analyze properties differently? How do you analyze what you're doing differently? How do you even consider doing an equity takeout when interest rates are higher and it doesn't look as sexy? What do you do?
Look, that's a great question. Honestly, it's a really good question. And a lot of people are asking the question right now. I mean, if we just take single family houses, right? Let's just take a basic person right now. I'm just going to put in the US because I know the market here. I don't know your market as well. So most people here have a locked in low 30-year fixed rate, right? And I tell them your kind of like your value is not even the equity, it's not the rate. The value right have on that property is your payment. You have such a low payment that it's locked in for 30 years. You feel very confident. So for you to actually sell that house and go get a higher rate, pay more for a property, that's a real big mind shift, right? So right now, most people are like, you know what? I'm just going to sit back and relax. And maybe I never move. Maybe I just chill out. Well, this is what happens to real estate investors and people is sometimes we have to be okay with not doing anything. Like sometimes you're like, I've got my properties, they're in good debt, and I'm looking at deals. Nothing makes sense. It's frustrating. I want to buy. But sometimes you're like, then I'm just not going to buy. I'm going to sit here and I'm going to maybe focus on something else, or can I add value in my properties? But sometimes there's just not a time to buy. But I can take, for example, here in the US, so I'm stepping back for me personally, and I go, multifamily is probably not a good time to buy because cap rates are still low, like in San Diego, and rates are high. And it should be opposite. So it doesn't make sense. And even the big guys and all this, they're just kind of sitting. Sure, there might be deals here and there, but it's very hard. So I look around and I go, what are people doing that's making money? And so that's the good thing is I know people that wholesale, that flip, that syndicate, that do like all the stuff. So I watch and I talk to them, I do their loans. And so right now here, if the flippers and the builders, they're doing well because there's no inventory. So if they can buy a dilapidated property at a really discounted price and fix it up and bring it to the market, even with these high rates, they're going to make money. And so as we know, rates are here. They're probably going to slowly trend down because that's the way inflation and jobs and all the consumers going is we're just going to end up going down. We're not going to go back to probably 2 or 3% rates, but let's just say we go from 7 to 5. That's a huge drop. And if inventory doesn't pick up, we know buyers are coming in and values are coming up. So right now, even though I'm not really a home flipper and that's not what I do realize, I told Krystal, I think for the next 12 months or, year and a half, based on fundamentals, if apartments aren't there, we want to do something to make money or put our money to work. So I'm watching flippers buy deals and make them. I know them. I think now I'm like, cool, we're going to go in, maybe buy some 2 to 4 units. Maybe we'll buy them, fix them up, rent them out and hold them, and then sell them at a good time and trade out of those, the 1031 we call it, into a bigger building. So the way knowing to read the market and what to do is, like I mentioned before, is being around the right people, watching the right data, knowing what other people are doing that are winning. And I don't have to guess at this because I can see it. So guessing is scary. Shooting with the blindfold on is scary. And that's what a lot of people do is they're scared to go do something because they don't know what to do. It's because they're not around the right people, around the right information. So that's really what I'm focusing on is I've been sitting back watching others and I'm seeing it. And I clearly can say, that's probably an area that we can go into and win and make some money. And then that's probably where I'm seeing I'm seeing a lot of investors not do this. They usually do it, but I'm seeing a lot of them do this and win. And that's probably where I'll go focus and do some deals in.
Okay, so that a lot of information there. Basically, talk to people obviously was a big thing. Listen to trends, actually see what's happening. A lot of people obviously aren't involved in the mortgage industry, so they're not necessarily going to see these sorts of things, which puts them at disadvantage. But I think that's where you talked about having a team of people who can at least talk about these things and or putting yourself in groups and situations where people are positively focused. Circling back to that, one of the things that comes up the most frequently with me, Kenny, and this makes me think a lot about what you said in terms of spotting opportunities, trends, and just generally speaking, your experience in the marketplace. And you probably experience this too, is I get a lot of people that come up to me and they say, hey, like, I think I'm in the position to buy my first property here. Like, I think I can buy my first investment. What do I just buy a condo? Do I buy, whatever? What do I buy? And where we live in our part of the world is no different. So you're located in San Diego. My office is located in the greater Vancouver area. I mean, we do financing in many different places in the country, but most of the major cities are pretty expensive these days, like Vancouver, Toronto, and a variety of other different places. And so for a lot of people, like the first thing to say is like, what do I look at? Because I only have a budget of like $500,000. Like if I want to buy something, I'm buying just like a little condo. Like how do I determine where to start is probably the biggest question if I don't have, a whackload of cash here.
Yeah, great question. So I have the conversation often. So number one is if they're lacking capital, I said, well, is there somebody you can partner with? Oh, didn't think about that. Number one is maybe you partner up with somebody because guess what? When I got started, when we were doing our deals, we did partner up on other apartment buildings, and then eventually I didn't need them. So I didn't want to do that, but I didn't have a choice. So sometimes, again, thinking outside the box. So when you're going up to those investor meetings and meeting people and you go, man, I really like this guy, Alex. He's cool. Like we're on the same vibe. He gets it. Like maybe I could just partner with him. And sometimes, you know what? Family and friends and close people is not the right partner because Alex is going to play a role and Kenny's going to play a role. And that's what we do. So finding somebody to partner with, like the guys I know here, they met at places, they became partners. And honestly, it's a better relationship than when they partner with their family because it's business. They understand what they're doing. And it's become, so number one, partner. The second thing is depending on how much money you have, like here, a lot of people here, maybe they own a property, but they're willing to rent it out and go do a house hack. So they're willing to put minimal down and go buy a 2 to 4 using different kind of creative financing to get in. That's another thing. The other thing is I tell them, hey, is mom, dad, whatever family willing to give you money? And sometimes in, affluent areas like this, they're like, we're willing to give you money if you want to go buy real estate because they believe in it. And then last is whatever money you have, and that's all you have, and you don't have friends, you don't have family, you want to do it yourself, is you got to back into what does that deal look like? And that's simply putting pen to paper and saying, is it a condo? Is it a house? Is it this? But most of the time, if you're going to buy something and you're not going to really cash flow, maybe it's the equity play to I'm going to buy something, fix it up, sell it and keep doing this until I get enough equity and I could dump it into a bigger property. So it's like I said, there's many ways to skin the cat or whatever these sayings are. But I think you just have to, the more you know, the easier it is. So for example, if I'm going to go and flip houses and it's not like I've got friends that have done 1,000 flips, 600 flips, all this, even though I'm comfortable doing it, I'm still going to go ask them, sit them down. What do you think I should do? If I find a deal, what do you guys think? I'm going to run it by them. Just like when they're buying multifamily or they have questions, financing, they're coming to us and we're sitting down spending the time. So I'm going to go to those experts, even though I know I can do this. But if I know somebody that does it better than me, I'm just going to ask them, even though I'm jumping in there.
Love that. Yeah. So asking somebody who knows it a little bit more than you, never have that ego that says that you can't ask the question, get
100%.
around people who have probably done it before. Kenny, we're probably gonna have to do this 3 times to be honest with you, but we're getting close on time. We got you for a few more minutes real quickly here. So first one, because to put it in context, what's a mistake that people are making every day that you're seeing right now? Like what is something you're seeing right now that is a constant mistake people are making?
I always say this. I have this saying: have a plan for your money, or your money will have a plan for you. So we live in a world where it's click this button, you get this now and that. I think the mistake is people are not willing to sacrifice. So that's the one thing is I didn't mention prior is one of the things that Krystal and I did is we lived way below our means for a long time. And I knew that when I'm buying deals and deploying capital at a rapid rate and I have minimal expenses, I'm not stressed. So the problem is a lot of people have this lifestyle they've built up. And so they're not willing to bring it back down to make big gains in their life. So that's a mind shift. So I think a lot of people, the biggest mistake is they're just have too big of a lifestyle and they're like, well, I can't invest, I don't have the money. But if you were willing to back it down or even sell the house, take the capital and redeploy it and rent, that's crazy. Well, imagine where you could be in 10 years. You would think that's even crazier to be in like a financial position where you can have some more freedom.
That's good. Yeah, that's really good. Thank you for clarifying that. I mean, I think that's just generally good guidance as a whole is what types of sacrifice. And let's be honest, like I know you're not talking about eating, macaroni and cheese every single evening, like,
Nope.
but it's just looking at your overall situation and saying, this is where I want to be. What are a few things that I could do to change that? And I've seen that too in my own life as well, like the leak, or I don't know what the word would be, but like cash flow just starting to pour out as you stop paying attention to it is massive. So what I'm hearing from you is to just get really hyper clear on where you're at right now and what types of sacrifices you're willing to make. A lack of clarity can lead to a lot of frustration. I would agree. That's good, man. That's awesome. I love that you're obviously focused pretty heavily on education. I think I'll definitely want to, come on and talk a lot more about your experience in the multifamily space right now. But, to be quite honest with you, I'd just love to know, Kenny, what drives you to focus so much on education right now? Like, what is it that gets you focused or hyped up about providing this value and this information to people?
I just think, unfortunately, I hate to say it, we just live in a world where it's, I go to high school, I go to college, I get a job, I buy a house, I get cars, I get a 401k, I have kids, and that's kind of the standard. And then a lot of these people, they'll see somebody in the distance or they'll see this person with that lifestyle, like, how come Joey's dad doesn't work? Does this guy ever work? Or how come, you see these people here and there, you're like, what does that guy do? What did he do different than I didn't do? Well, guess what he did different? He got in the game. He started a business. He did something. So I think just educating people, saying, hey, look, you could be bigger, you could be smaller. There's other options. Maybe outside your 401k, you want to do something else. Also, is if you built a little bit of a real estate portfolio and you paid it off, you could leave your kids something. So I think for me, it was growing up in a corporate environment, realizing that's not freedom. That's like a trap. I think a lot of people are trapped and they go the easy route. And they don't realize that if they just went down a different road, maybe a little bit harder, a little bit more sacrifice for a period of their life, that at the end they would have much more freedom. And so I always say this, doing loans, like, I've got to talk to a lot of people in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. And I talk to them and I ask a lot of questions. And I've never met somebody in their 60s that said, man, I wish I'd have bought a bigger house and more cars and more jewelry and all this. What they do say is, Kenny, I wish I would have been smarter with my money. I wish I'd invest real estate like you. I wish I would have sacrificed more and I could have done that. I just didn't know. If somebody like you told me about that, or if I had a podcast or a YouTube or a book or a course back then, I would have done things differently. And so when I hear stuff like that, I realize, like, well, maybe I can get somebody else by me sharing my story, and I can change somebody else's life to see something. There's possibly a different way, a different path.
Yeah, I think we're going to stop right there, man. That was gold, gold, gold. All of it was gold. So Getting the Cash Flow Game is the name of the podcast. Definitely when we launch this one, we're going to have links all over the place for you guys to check out Kenny and Krystal. Hopefully we can get Krystal up on here in the future as well. We'll leave that right there. Thank you, my friend, for just bringing so much value and so much energy. Appreciate you, buddy.
Thanks, Alex. Awesome.
That was an unreal episode of The Flow. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did on my side right here. If you haven't already done so, make sure to check out all of the incredible resources that we have available. You can find us on Instagram at Flow Mortgage Co. You can find us on our website, getflowmortgage.ca. And of course, don't forget our free first-time homebuyer masterclass that's currently available on our website for anyone who listens to the episodes. And if you loved what you listened here today, the only thing that we ask for is to share this with someone else that you think this could help. And hey, maybe leave us a great review online.